guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Nudist RV Park HOA tried to kick out a disabled man for not being naked and beautiful enough. I've always lived a relatively good life. I'm one of those people who has just been lucky and fortunate, while also having a strong work ethic and motivation. When I was young, I started a tire recycling company that took off and made me a millionaire. When I got to be in my 60s, I decided that I wanted to sell the business and do more with my life. Specifically, I wanted to help others. That's exactly what I ended up doing. I sold my tire recycling business to a corporation that will keep it going, and I'll live comfortably for the rest of my life. With my extra spare time in retirement, my wife started taking us to a program our church does once a month, where we get together to bring food, clothes and other necessary items to people who need it. That's where I met a young man that would change my life forever. His name was Levi, and he was only in his early 30s but suffered from multiple health conditions that had him wheelchair-bound and requiring assistance. Levi and I hit it off one day while we were chatting about books. We are both avid readers of science fiction and had several of the same favorite authors and novels. He even told me that he was writing a novel that was inspired by his life struggles. I was absolutely impressed by his courage and story, and I knew that I wanted to get to know him more. My wife, Alice, and I continued to work with this church program and Levi, and I became pretty close friends. It was close to Christmas, and I told Alice that I wanted to buy Levi a mobile home. I had been looking at several that were handicap-friendly, and I knew of a place that he could live. The one catch was that it was a nudist RV park. Normally, I wouldn't think this was an option, but one of my friends had a family member that lived in a nudist RV park, and they love it, plus it's extremely affordable. I spent $30,000 on a beautiful and practical mobile home for Levi. Many people have judged me for this and think that I am only doing it because I want the praise, but really, I just want to see him happy. He deserves way more than what he has ever received in his life. Levi was so humbled by this that he cried and barely was able to accept it was a gift. He wanted to pay me for it, but I continued to insist that it was already in his name. We immediately got to work on having it sent to its new home in the nudist village. Levi wasn't sure what to think about that part of the situation, but said that it would probably make things easier since getting dressed can be such a difficult chore some days. I had purchased the lot where the mobile home will stay, technically making me the landlord, but all of the money will still go to the park. I really did that just so I could ensure that everything gets paid for. If he gets in a bind, I will know and pay for the monthly rent. It's not very expensive, so I didn't mind at all. Things seemed to be going great. Levi had made friends, was paying his bills on time, and really just enjoying his independence for once. He had fully embraced the nudist lifestyle and was also pleased with this new change. It was a few months later that Levi received a letter in the mail, saying that the HOA had decided not to renew his biannual lease. Apparently in this park, they decide twice a year if you are a resident they want in their neighborhood. This was news to me. I was absolutely pissed, and Levi was in shock. He had no idea what reasons they would have to want to kick him out. He had always paid his rent early and had followed all of their rules. I contacted the HOA board and started digging right away into what was going on. The first woman I spoke to seemed to have a snobby tone of voice, saying that Levi was not a good resident and that they were within their rights to evict him for reasons. As his landlord, I requested a documented list of reasons, and she said that she would have to work on that. A week passed and Levi received another letter saying that he would need to relocate in 30 days. No explanation at all. I called again and demanded that I spoke to someone who knew what was going on. From there, I only received bullshit. So, I started calling them out. I told them that they couldn't evict this man because he was handicapped or not attractive enough for their nudist park. They immediately started saying that there were other reasons and began saying shit like, he had prostitutes over or left his dog outside once on accident. Actual garbage reasons. It became very clear to me that they had no actual reasons for wanting to evict my friend, Levi. He had already dealt with enough shit in his life, and these people were wanting to kick him out because he wasn't some beautiful nudist. My friend who had a family member in the neighborhood did confirm that she had seen them evict others who were arguably less attractive for bizarre reasons. I decided that I would not accept this type of treatment for my friend. He didn't deserve it. I pulled out the big guns and looked into information on the Americans with Disabilities Act and found out what actual legal jurisdictions these people had. Turns out that unless they had proof of these reasons for evicting him, they had no legal leg to stand on. It really just appears as if they are kicking him out because he is disabled. The board held a meeting at my request so that we could discuss Levi's case with their neighborhood. I let them hand me their paperwork on the incidents that were why they wanted to evict him. It was obvious to me, someone who wasn't even a lawyer, that these were not done on the day that they say they were. The handwriting is the same person, and the dates don't match with when they originally said the situations occurred. It all just seemed staged. They kept saying that they didn't want to evict him because he was disabled, yada yada, but I could tell they were trying to cover their asses. So, I threw the ADA book at them. I was quick to tell them that I had talked to lawyers. I really hadn't, but they didn't know that. It didn't take much time of using some fancy terminology and my businessman attitude before I had them all shaking in their little nudist boots. At the end of the meeting, Levi was allowed to stay, and I told them that anytime there is a problem that I want to know about it that day. I'm not giving them a chance to screw him over with false accusations again. All of the good people in the neighborhood were pleased that Levi got to stay. He had become a popular guy and many of them are encouraging and look out for him. I am thankful that I could find such a welcoming community for such a wonderful person to live. It's been over a year since this has happened and I still enjoy seeing my friend and spending time with him every day, even when he's naked on the front porch at the nudist RV park. I have continued to do work with the same church community program, even bringing Levi with me to help and inspire others who have similar physical struggles to him. He is a beautiful person who deserves beautiful things, and happiness and a warm place to live is one of them. The next story is titled, "My apartment building accidentally rented out my apartment starting a month ago, says sorry but we are out of luck. TL. DR. Apartment building messed up. Rented out my apartment starting next month even though I signed a renewed lease months ago, now suggesting I have to move out for 2 weeks minimum and then hopefully into a similar, but different, apartment." Edit. Title should say, "A month from now, not a month ago." I live in California. I have lived in the same apartment for over a year. In May, I signed a lease renewal for another year, to begin this September 1st, when my current lease is due up. We signed it in the same manner we had signed the previous 2 leases we have signed, on the apartment online portal. When we were done signing the 50 pages or whatever it was, my partner and I both got an email with a PDF of the current lease. I hadn't thought about it since. A few days ago, they sent us a packet describing our move-out duties. We were understandably confused. Upon further inspection, our new lease was slated to run from the 1st of September 22 to August 31, 22, or -1 day. Obviously, this was a clerical error on their part that we failed to notice initially. My partner went to discuss this with them in the office, and after an hour of accusing us of messing up somehow, they finally admitted that the lease had been signed in May, but for some reason never pulled from its portal into the records of the apartment building. The man helping my wife refused to explain further. He literally said it's too complicated. But from what she can tell, after the lease is signed, someone from their end is supposed to go get it and sign it for the apartment company, which for whatever reason never happened. We think it was the date issue, but the apartment guy thinks that wouldn't matter. Anyway, he eventually acknowledged it was an issue on their end and said something to the effect of, "Maybe I can get you in a similar apartment in the same complex if we have one available. But you would have to move out from 8/31 to 9/15 while we get it ready, since we rented out your current apartment." He also kinda blamed a previous employee, but ultimately said any solution requires the general manager to weigh in, who wasn't there that day, and we hope to speak with tomorrow. I don't want to move. I'm a grad student and we don't have tons of money. I also am starting my 2nd year of school in like a week, and don't want to move and deal with all that entails in the 3rd week of the semester. I also don't want to find a place to stay and store my junk for 2 weeks, which I couldn't afford anyway. This apartment kinda sucks, but I don't have the time or energy to try and find a new place in our college town, which features insane prices even if we could find a place. Further, we had no reason to suspect there were any issues. We completed the lease on our end, and there were no issues or warnings until a few days ago. Any errors, as far as I can tell, were solely on their end. Basically, my long-winded question is, can they make us move out if they rented our apartment, even though we signed a lease and relied on it in good faith? I have lived here over a year, never missed rent or had any complaints against me. Update. My apartment rented out my place even though I signed a lease in May. TLDR. We probably won't have to move places or out for 2 weeks, but we will have to sign a new lease, hopefully by the end of the week. My wife and I went to speak to the guy today. He said he would call sometime yesterday but did not. It seems like everything has worked out. He said we would be able to get an apartment, and when I, probably a bit rudely, said we weren't going to change apartments or move out for 2 weeks, he immediately said that wouldn't be a problem. We will probably have to sign a new lease, which is fair since the previous one was a negative time span. We won't know for sure we are out of the woods until we sign the new lease, which he speculated should be ready by the end of this week. Although based on our previous dealings with this place even beyond this interaction, we aren't holding our breath. So, while it isn't totally over, it looks like there will be a happy ending. On a side note, the man we talked to implied there were multiple other people with similar situations. It sounds like we may be the only ones with the reverse timeline lease, but it sounds like other people missed a single signature on the lease. For reference, you have to sign literally 50+ times, and instead of double-checking or clarifying, the complex just rented out their apartments. The next story is titled, "Don't Piss Off Your Farmer Neighbor, You May Have to Pay for It." TLDR, city attorney buys huge farm estate in rural community. Refuses to work with farmer neighbor who used to maintain the property. Property now looks like shit, attorney has extra bills, and the entire estate got rezoned, costing the attorney $50,000 per year in property taxes. So, this didn't happen to me, but an attorney that I work with regularly as part of my job. He moved from a very high call area to our rural community. Sold his $2 million house, paid off and inherited from his grandparents, and bought 50+ acres with a huge house in a bedroom community that has a lot of dairy farms. He always used to say how it was much better living up here, both in terms of the lifestyle and monetarily, as his urban $2 million house had property taxes in excess of $40,000 per year. Now, in addition to the huge house, the property was mostly fields, 40-ish acres, and had a 10-acre or so large woodlot. After he moved into his new house, the attorney was approached by his neighbor, one of the area dairy farmers. The farmer told the attorney how he had a handshake agreement with the former owner of the attorney's home property. The farmer would mow the fields for hay 2 to 3 times per year and would harvest a sustainable number of trees out of the woodlot. In exchange, the former property owner got 10% of the chopped wood, which was more than enough to heat the house all year long without having to run the oil boiler for anything more than hot water. The farmer wanted to keep this arrangement going, as it had worked out well for both parties for over a decade. The attorney thought the former owner was being taken advantage of and refused to do a handshake agreement but told the farmer to give him a week to draw up a proper contract. The farmer was not overjoyed with making this out to be more than a gentleman's agreement but agreed to come back the following week. The attorney decided that what would be fair was that the farmer should pay him $1,000 each time he mowed the fields for hay, since the farmer would feed the hay to his cows for free, otherwise, completely ignoring that the farmer was using his own equipment and time to do the haying, and that the lawyer deserved 50% of the chopped wood, not 10%, or at least the 50% of the revenue the farmer got from selling the excess chopped wood, again ignoring the equipment and time investment of the farmer. As you can guess, the farmer refused. This all happened in late 2019, when the fields were rather bare and the supply of chopped wood for the house was full. Well, here comes 2020 and now the fields start looking like garbage, because none of the other farmers will pay to hay the fields. In fact, after speaking with the first farmer, all of the other area farmers are unwilling to mow the fields unless the attorney pays them $1,000 per mowing. And, of course, come wintertime the attorney's woodpile is depleted and he has to use the oil boiler to heat his entire home, costing well over $300 per month in winter heating costs. Now we come to early 2021, tax prep season. The farmer, being a dutiful community-minded citizen, informs the town that he did not cultivate any of the attorney's land for the entirety of 2020, nor did he know of any other farmers who did. Well, as it turns out this is a big deal, because in our state farmland is assessed at a much lower value than residential property and additionally has a separate and lower tax rate. The attorney's land had previously been entirely zoned as farmland, except for the house and a few acres of lawn around it. Now, the town sent out an assessor and rezoned the entire 50-plus acres as residential, which more than tripled the taxable property value and imposed the residential tax rate rather than the much lower farm tax rate. The attorney was quite surprised and furiously told me, and everyone else we work with, all this past week how he's going to sue the town because they now expect him to pay $50,000 per year in property taxes. The last story is titled, "Ask Me to Slow Down While Driving Through My Neighborhood?" Okay. I live in a very quiet suburban neighborhood with lots of active neighbors, joggers, bikers, dog walkers, baby strollers, kids playing ball in the streets, etc. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour, but when I see lots of foot traffic on the sidewalks, I bring it down to 15 miles per hour or even 10 miles per hour if I see a big group of kids playing in the street. There's this sweet group of kids who play basketball in the middle of the street 8 doors down from my home. When they see cars approaching, they move to the curb and wait for the cars to pass before resuming their game. One day I was driving home from work, and I saw the kids out playing, and their mother was on the front lawn talking with another adult. I slowed down to 10 miles per hour and went to the complete opposite side of the street as I crept by. A little while later she knocked on my door and complained about how fast I was driving and that I could have harmed her precious children. I said, the speed limit is 25 miles per hour, and I was going 10 miles per hour. How much slower do you want me to go? She said, I don't care, just slow down or else I'm going to call the police. I have a doorbell camera so I can see you every time you drive by. Okay, crazy lady, whatever you say. The next day, the kids were outside playing in the street again. I slowly approached, came to a full stop, and then I took my foot off the brakes and let the car crawl at 1 mile per hour. The kids stared at me all confused as it took me an entire minute to pass through their makeshift basketball court. I continued to do this a few more times until one day the mother came and knocked on my car window as I was crawling by. I lowered my window and asked if there was a problem. She said, why are you going so slow? Are you stalking my children? I said, no, of course not. You demanded that I slow down, so I am. And I rolled up my window and went on my way. She comes banging on my door again and says, don't get smart with me. Now you're going too slow. I said, are you saying that going 10 miles per hour is okay now? Because if you don't like it, you can call the police. She huffed and crossed her arms and stomped off my porch. Thanks for listening.